Let's talk about miniatures. I really don't like miniatures myself. I prefer pure theater of the mind. I find that miniatures get in the way of the imagination. That's my take on it anyway. I always want you inside of your mind, focusing there during gameplay. I like to build the board inside of your head through description. And then let you create your miniature, in the imagination. Your piece on that board where you move around. And I like to use different language, right? Say during combat. I don't want you to tell me how many spaces you can move. I'll tell you how many rounds you are away from the enemy. And I'll give you enough information so you know where the enemy is compared to your character. Why do I say that miniatures get in the way of your imagination? Well, you might argue to me that they help you. Miniatures, terrain, it helps you imagine what's going on. And I know there's truth in what you're saying, but here's what I would tell you. Without the miniature, without the terrain, your imagination will work even better. And if you don't believe that your imagination can go to this peak level, I would ask you, have you ever read a book? Well, if you're in this hobby, tabletop role-playing games, I'm sure you have. So when you read the book, you don't have miniatures, right? You're just reading description. And what are you doing? You're imagining everything. And it's deep, right? You can get right into the story being told to you. And the novel, what's it doing? It's only using words, just like the Dungeon Master. No board, no minis, and your imagination is just fine. Actually, it's better than fine. Think about it. You are the one behind your imagination. So your imagination is going to be tailored to you. It's going to be more entertaining to you than anything else could produce inside of your mind. Right? If it's just you left to create the image, right? You're not going to get better than that. You'll notice a lot of people that love books, right? They love certain books, and when those books are turned into a movie, most people are going to be unhappy. Like, even if they're okay with it, they're still going to have complaints. Why is that? Because their imagination will do for them something the movie can't do. It will never be able to come close to what the imagination is doing, because your imagination will produce what you want, what you like, what is suited to, your taste. And since it's so suited to you, whatever you imagine is going to be better than what anyone else can produce, including trying to produce minis for you, right? Again, if you abandon your own imagination through not making effort, and then using other trigger points like miniatures and that, your imagination becomes corrupted to a degree. And you'll even find a lot of times you're not using your imagination when you're busy looking at the miniatures. Well, you can see the board, you can see where the wall is. Yeah, I get it. How much are you really in your imagination at that point? How immersed are you into the game? And that's another argument that I would have about theater of the mind. I find that you're going to be more immersed in theater of the mind inside of that imagination than you would be if you were playing with miniatures and a board. Here is another issue with miniatures and terrain boards. You know what they're used for? They're used as a backdoor to bring in what you call MMO, RPG, video game elements into the system. You can see that with WotC. Miniatures are used for this reason. And you'll notice something else. You would think WotC should have taken a big hit in the last so many years for the way they've treated D&D. Producing crap, right? But what has held them up? Forget just Hasbro. The sales of miniatures. Something I think the hobby should be moving away from. Well, what about combat, Condor? What about combat? Isn't it good to use miniatures to help in that area? Like, okay, Condor, I get it. Over here, it's good to do theater of the mind, but what about when you get to combat? Right? Don't miniatures help? Well, no, in my opinion, they slow combat down. You can do combat faster with theater of the mind. And you can do, larger combats and smaller combats in Theater of the Mind. You can do a combat where there's like 20 enemies coming at the party, or it could be 5, right? It doesn't matter. You can do all that in Theater of the Mind. You can track the whole thing. And if you really don't know that, you haven't really pushed yourself. And in my honest opinion, I think there should be a certain standard that you have to meet to be a game master. Now, I'm not saying that's a rule or I want it to be a law. I'm saying it should be a standard of expectation from other people in the hobby. They should expect you to be putting more of an effort in. And you might think, well, it's really hard. It doesn't matter how much effort I put in. I just can't do that combat. Yes, you can. I believe anyone can do Theater of the Mind. You just have to put a lot of effort into it. And these games aren't meant for mentally lazy people. Even the most casual approach to a tabletop role-playing game requires that the game master, if no one else, puts in a fair bit of work if they want it to work out, in any certain way. Now, you get some lazy people out there that get by without prepping anything, but getting lucky for a few sessions really doesn't cut it. Your job is to always make sure things are going to work out. You're responsible for that. So when you show up to the table, if you're not prepped, if you're not ready, if it's all by the seat of your pants, the entire thing, well, then you're not doing your job because you're responsible to make sure things are going to work out. You're at least your effort should be there to try to make things work out. Not everything's going to be perfect, but you should always be aiming for 100% success at the table if you're a game master. Let me teach you a secret that many of you won't probably know. That imagination thing that I've been drilling, the imagination you're really going to be working at if you're doing Theater of the Mind. Well, the better your imagination is working, the easier it is to remember what it is you're imagining. So Game Master, when you're doing combat, the better you can picture track everything in your head, the more you can imagine it and see it, the easier it is to remember as you're moving forward. Right? And another thing you can learn to do is take quick notes. What I mean by quick notes is like this. It's something I learned from military guys. You could have like 3 sentences worth of a statement that needs to be said. But can you cut it down? How far can you cut it down to make the same point? Well, when you're taking notes, you got to learn, from experience, how you remember things. Do you need to write out everything in 2 sentences? Or can you write it out in 3 or 4 words and remember pretty much what you have to remember? And that's going to be true for everyone. So you got to learn how to take notes quick. That is going to be suitable for you. That's going to help in tabletop role-playing gaming, period. Right? To take quick notes. It's going to be really effective during combat. But in most cases, you don't have to, because the better you can work that imagination, the easier it is to remember. That's why Theater of the Mind, once you work with that imagination as a game master, it would shock you if you don't believe that's the case. Because if you work your imagination out, it will amaze you how easy it is to remember things that you might have intimidated you, thinking, I can't remember all that from round to round to round. Another thing you can do in Theater of the Mind combat is, at the end of the round or somewhere in the middle or some point, every couple rounds or something like this, you remind yourself and the players quickly about their positions in the fight, where the enemies are, what's going on. I do it round to round, but I do it really quick personally, so it doesn't get in the way, like sort of a quick rundown at the start of a round and make sure people know where they are. That's it, a clarification. And if people just seem to be jiving with it, on occasion I'll skip giving an update on the round if people just seem to know where they are. And most people do, because just like the game master, the players, in Theater of the Mind, their imagination is being worked out, and even they're having an easier time remembering things than, say, if they were playing with miniatures. As a game master, you can throw me into a closet with some players, and all I would really need is some dice to run an entire session. Right on the spot, right there, no issues, no miniatures needed, don't have to use quarters to replace them, nothing. And to me, that should always be an option for every game master. No matter what the situation they're in, they should be able to run the game. You shouldn't have to carry toys around with you. And I mean, honestly, I just see miniatures as something that's in our way. It's a backdoor for bad gameplay. It gets in the way of the imagination. In my opinion, the more you're in the imagination, the more immersed you are into a session. Like immersion as in, here's how I define immersion in tabletop role-playing games. Because I don't want to use the general meaning, because you can take that all over the place. What I really mean is like somebody watching a movie, they're into it, and you say their name from like 10 feet away and they don't hear you. Like they got to say your name again or poke you in the shoulder because you are focused on that movie. You're into it. You're having a good time. And so you're not paying attention. Well, I want you there during a gaming session. And in Theater of the Mind, I think you're more there than you are if you're looking at a piece on the board. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this is just my opinion. And I'm not telling you that you're playing the game wrong. I'm telling you what I prefer and what I think. And that's all this is. I'm sorry if we disagree, but I'm not saying any of this to offend you. I just think these opinions and thoughts should be out there in the ether. Like out there as a topic. Out there for new people coming into the hobby to hear. And I don't hear a ton of people, a lot more people now in 2023 that speak like me, but even like 5 years ago, I would make content like this and people would come after me, and almost nobody who agreed with me wanted to speak up. A lot of people wouldn't say things like this because it was a hot topic. Now, years after I took a lot of heat on this, you can now more openly talk about this, and if you're someone who's into Theater of the Mind, you can openly state it now without people stalking you and doing all kinds of insane shit on the internet. And I get why people would be mad at me for this opinion. Some people have built up YouTube channels, right? They built themselves up on social media through miniatures, right? It's a big money game, right? And people have invested tons of money. And why I come around and tell them that they wasted their time, that what they're doing is not as good as, say, what I'm doing, given that I'm not using miniatures. I want to make this clear. I'm not implying that I am better than you. I'm not implying that because I'm doing something, that something has to be better than what you're doing. Here is my real argument. Theater of the Mind is not even mine. It's just a way of playing the game. It's not my way. It is my way to a degree, but I don't own it. Right? It's just a way of approaching the game. And separate it from me. And I just look at it and I go, do I really believe that it produces these things? Do I think the imagination is better worked out in a pure Theater of the Mind game and that miniatures take away from that and take away from immersion? Do I really believe all of this? Well, yes, I really do believe all of it. And I want to tell people what I think about this. And I want to be able to do it without people going insane, but I know people will. I get how that works. But it'd be nice to have an open discussion. Or, if you're going to yell at me, be honest, right? Don't be deceitful. Don't be insulting. Get angry. I get you're going to take some anger out on me if you want to. But I would say don't burn the bridge down with me. Let's have the harsh discussion. I just put out a video talking about the willingness to talk about this stuff openly. Now, I'm willing to have open dialogue. That's why I brought the video. That's why I'm bringing this video out, because I'm open to having the dialogue. I won't put up with insults or deceit. I really won't. I really won't. Right? If you feel like you can't win the argument the way you want to and you have to go to deceit, understand, I'm going to cut you off. I'm going to block you. It's going to happen that way, right? Like, if at the end of it, all we can do is agree to disagree and you haven't won, right? You haven't won the argument with me. You're going to have to let it go there, right? If you're an honest person. And maybe you can come back at it later and we can keep the argument going back and forth. But as long as you toe the line, I'll toe the line. I won't block you and I'll be just as fair. But if you play games with me, understand, if you insult me, I might insult you. I don't mind the idea of an eye for an eye, right? Sometimes you gotta spit fire back at people that are spitting fire at you. Anyway, for now, please, take care. You know what you can do? You can hit the like button. You can share the video. Oh, and there's another button you can press. That one that lets you subscribe to my channel for more content. Oh yeah, there's that bell thing. You can press that so you know when I've uploaded a new video right away.